Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nation Watch. It's Sunday, 20th July 2025. We're rushing towards regional general elections 2025. We're speeding up towards the tape to the date when the People's Progressive Party will be removed from government and this country will be restored to normalcy. This country will once again have a government in place that cares about the welfare of the people, cares about the security of the people, cares about the growth, development of youth population, and cares about particularly our women and girls. 2 Sundays ago, we introduced to you a number of new and young candidates. And today we propose to continue the process of bringing you new candidates. 2 Sundays ago, we introduced a number of persons, among whom were two prominent attorneys at law. And today we're going to be introducing to you three attorneys at law who have joined the list of candidates for the APNU. I'm going to start with a very young man. I'd like to introduce the voting population of this country and the population further afield to Mr. Eden Corbin, a very, very young attorney at law, a leader in his own right, and a person from whom you'll be hearing a lot more as the days go by, and a person from whom you will be hearing a lot more in the years to come. Eden, welcome to Nation Watch. It's a privilege to have you. And I know that you're bubbling with energy and, set to launch what is, in fact, a new career path for you in politics.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me here. Good day to all of the viewers. It is, as you said, I am indeed bursting with energy, but not just because I'm here in the show, but because in a few hours from now, we're going to be in Melanie, keeping hot on the tracks, and we're continuing the great work that has been done for the party.
So wherever you are, get your basket together, get the family together, and head down to, is it down or up? To Melanie on the east coast of Demerara. Join the campaign train. The campaign goes to Melanie later on today. I believe it starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And we'll be featuring some brilliant speakers, some fresh faces, some excellent leaders who will be putting their shoulders to the wheel to take our country forward to its rendezvous with prosperity. Eden, what pushed you in the direction of politics? What motivated you? What drives the energy that you possess?
Well, I do not think that this is the first time I'm entering into politics. What it would be my first time really pushing out to the front lines. I've been actively involved with the PNCR from as far back as 2017, where I would have officially joined the membership, and I would have been working behind the scenes, and engaging in the youths and doing a wide array of things in relation to moving the country forward. My focus has always been on the youths like myself, because while I may have taken a more liking to things and matters of politics, I always see, my colleagues would not too much agree with it. And then there's the age-old saying that, politics is not for me. So I believe the opportunity was presented to myself by our comrade leader, Aubrey C. Norton. And while I may have been a bit unsure as to what I should do in relation to the offer that was made to me, it only took me a few hours of really thoughtful consideration to realize that, Eden, this has been something that you have been pushing for, and that is for more youths to be involved. And what better way to encourage them to become the same story, to show them that, hey, well, you know, if I could do it, you can do it too. And that is what has brought me to this point. And I mean, there's also the context of the rampant corruption, the nepotism, the mismanagement of resources, and the two Guyanas being claimed under a one Guyana umbrella. To me, it's like a no-brainer, you know. This is the time for something new and something fresh, and I'm more than willing and ready to get, you know, my hands in the dirt and get the work done.
Tell me something about what you see happening to young people in this country that you would like to change, that you would like to work towards changing.
I believe that there is a widespread lack of information. And that is not because the information is not available, it's because the youths are not taking it upon themselves to be more active participants in their legacy and in the matters that affect them. And I think that is one of the main things I see, especially in relation to youths. They don't think that politics has anything to do with them. Lots of them say, I mean, I had a conversation with a young lady the other day, and her reason for not wanting to vote was because she was of the opinion that there was no consequence for her not voting. And I think that is just a microcosm of a larger issue that we see. The youths are disenfranchised, they're demoralized, and they see politics as just this big thing with all the people going back and forth. And you know what? I don't even blame them, because what has been being perpetuated over the years is a poor perception of what politics truly is. Politics is really representative of the government institution or a particular party putting forward particular goals and aspirations and these things. But what they have seen is a system where there's a lot of infighting and there's this and there's that, and they're not really informed fully as to the full scope of what the political landscape means to their future. And I think that is one of the main things that I have been actively working in all of the communities, you know, even where I work, even where I live, to really get the youths to be more engaged and to ask more questions, to realize that, look, politics is not just a big people thing. Politics has all of us as a part of it. And if we want to be able to change Guyana, if we want to be able to see new things happening, we have to take the first step of engaging.
The current regime seem not to recognize the diverse nature of the youth population, the diverse nature of the interests of the youth population. The question of rights, violation of rights of people, particularly young people. This whole question of stereotypical approach by the police, for example, in dealing with young people. You drive through Prashad Nagar, you see some youths hanging on a corner, it's not an issue. You drive through Albaistong, or you go through Agricola, or you drive through Leopold Street, and you see a couple of youths kicking ball or something, and there's an issue. There's a police reaction that is at variance from youths in Prashad Nagar, Bel Air Park, and so on. How do you see the transformation, a future transformation that treats with different handling of such situations by law enforcement in general, and by the wider society as well? This stereotypical approach is hurting our young people. How do we fix it?
Well, to me, that really goes back to the training that the police officers receive. But more importantly, I would like to play the devil's advocate. You know, I've spoken to many senior ranks within the police force who've been there, you know, career police. And one of them and I had a very candid conversation. And I was telling them, you know, why y'all always moving so, you know, why the police is always doing so. And, you know, he stood up there with pride and he told me that, you know what? we actually take our time to train these officers. We invest a lot of money, we invest a lot of time, and the same training that I would have received, I pass that on to the younger ranks. And I think the issue that we're dealing with is not just a particular issue of stereotyping or profiling particular youths from where they live, but I think it is a systemic issue. And when we're dealing with a systemic issue, we do not deal with it from the top, but you have to look at the root. What are the roots of the systemic issues? And then you would see that the powers that may be are encouraging this particular actions, particular approaches or disposition towards our youths. And then we also have to take a balanced consideration, meaning that we have to look at the youths themselves. And sometimes there is wrong on the system, but there's also wrong on the youths. For too often, youths want this fast life. They want this quick life. So they are easily engaged and they're easily roped into these things that are less than, acceptable. And then they cry out when the wrongs come to them. But we require the change to be both on the way in the youths think and the way in which they see themselves. And the reality is, as I alluded to earlier, the youths do not really see themselves as much. They just think that, hey, if I get a little money today, if I pick up a little sap, they're going to be good. They're not thinking 5 years down the road. So they're making some bad decisions along the way. And then you have the system that is already against them. And all it takes is for you to be at the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong set of people. And then we get the whole formula of injustice that, oh, the police is doing that. The reality is, Mervyn, the police have a job to do. And in doing their police, in executing their job, there's a certain scope that they are allowed to have in order to effectually do their job. Because you don't want a police officer who's afraid to arrest somebody. You don't want a police officer who's afraid to pursue a criminal, because then our safety becomes prejudiced. But you don't want youths to feel that the police cannot do their job and we could just cry out like, oh, you're trying to kill me, or oh, you're trying to do this, or oh, you're trying to do this or that to us particularly. And due to that, it requires both sides to think differently. And I think this is what the coalition brings to the table. We will bring a balanced and a measured view in relation to these particular issues. So we will be out in the communities and we will be dealing with the youths. We will be telling them and we will be empowering the youths. And I should know that the youth empowerment is not anything new or novice to our regime and to our party. If we look back at the 2015 to the 2020, there have been significant steps to not just empower the youths in relation to training them, but ensuring that the training and the qualifications they have will result into an actual job, will result into an actual career. And in the same way, we have to continue to train the police officers, to continue to let them be more aware of the society they're dealing with. And not because you're police means that every problem is going to be solved with an arrest. Not because you're police means that every problem is going to be solved by running in with guns. But it requires both sides to take a different, or what I would say, a paradigm shift to be able to deal with the issues. Because if it is one thing that I've learned that is very easy, Mervyn, it is to criticize. That is the easiest thing we can do. We can sit all day and criticize. But when it comes to now taking active steps in moving away from the ills that we're all aware of, it does not happen by one side. It requires a balanced approach.
Which brings me to the point that you made earlier. I want to go back to this. You talked about the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
And you place the root cause in the context of society itself and hinted that maybe the upbringing, familial situations might constitute part of the root. There's a flip side to that, and that is the top. Recruits to the Ghana Police Force are youths. Recruits to the Ghana Defense Force are youths. And they go into a system that is rotten at the top. And they emulate the badged and decorated seniors that they must work with. For example, one classic case comes to mind. An acting commissioner of police collects $8.5 million and puts it in a statement that he collected this money from a named businessman, and that money was supposed to have funded the marriage ceremony of another senior police officer. He went to the point of saying, look, we got some change, and I passed the money to the man, right? It is often said that fish rots from the head. So the root seems to be partially the top as well when it comes to law enforcement and how it impacts young people. Comment, please, if you will, on that.
Well, you see, when it comes to those issues, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, why are these youths entering these organizations? And the question, or the answer to the question rather, to me is very simple. They don't see it as a duty, or they are not fully cognizant of what is really required by you by making yourself a commissioned officer in either the defense force, the police force, or the fire service. For them, they see it as a job that is more or less secure, and I can do this, and I can go on the road, and I can make life hard for people, and I can look for raise of bread. You understand? I saw a podcast with a known Guyanese celebrity who was saying that a police pulled him over, and he was recounting a very, I would say, very well put statement for a police basically asking for a bribe. And this is what is attracting the youths into the force. They're not being attracted because they see that they could make a change. They're not going into the force because they actually want to contribute to the development and to the security and the sustainability of our country. They're doing it because it is a means to an end. You go into the police force, you get basic training. You are now more than qualified to go into the oil and gas sector with that particular training. You go into the army, you get your basic training. You can now move into private security, which has become very lucrative in the country at a point like this. So they see it as a stepping stone to better themselves. And we can see the clear results of that. So when you go into the system now and you see these ills, you are now further motivated to perpetuate that.
So we're agreeing that part of the problem is at the root, and in the case of the Guyana Police Force, it's at the top.
Correct. And even if we look at the top, remember now, you are only allowed to thrive as much as the persons beneath you accept it, whether we want to believe it or not, because the top brass of the police only represents what I would like to believe a small percentage of the overall view of what the police force contains.
Yes, they're excellent servicemen and women in the Guyana Police Force.
Correct. And while they may not be at the top, they are not going to speak out against the top. You know why? Because they want to reach to the top, and they don't want anybody to speak out. No, they don't want anybody to speak out to them. So they see the wrongs, they know the wrongs, and instead of telling themselves that, you know what, I'm going to vote to change it, they're going to say, I like it just so. So that when I am promoted now from a lance corporal and I probably move to a sergeant, or I move to an inspector or an ASP now, I want what those big boys got. And that is the system, because you see what we're forgetting is that the police force is one of the oldest organizations within this country. You understand me? And because of that, whatever we see being perpetuated for those senior officers that are senior now, at one point in their career, they had to be junior ranks, and they would have had to witness that. But now we should not cast the whole force as bad.
No, definitely
We agree that the issue is at the top. But as I say, the majority of the force is at the bottom. And if enough of the junior ranks begin to speak out through the proper channels, I note, because they want to go to Mary Mel, or they want to, want to get their 5 minutes in fame, and they are using every other avenue than is available for them. So you have institutions like the Office of Professional Responsibility now that are not able to effectively do their job because the persons who they are relying on to speak out and to blow the proverbial whistle, as we say. They are not fearful of reprimand. They are fearful that if they change the system, they can no longer get their couple cents on the dollar.
Well, we'll be talking some more about crime and security as the program goes on. We have a guest who will be speaking specifically to that and related issues. Eden Corbin, young professional, new candidate for a partnership for national unity as we go into the elections. In a minute, Eden, in a minute, tell the youngsters, first-time voters in particular, why vote APNU?
To all of the youths that can hear me right now, your vote matters. And I know that is the most cliche statement you're going to hear. We have heard it before. But it does not just matter because I'm a part of a party and we would like you to vote for us. It matters because the foundation of democracy rests within the people. Our constitution is because the people agreed that we have a constitution, and the people of Guyana agreed that this is how we select our leadership. By you not voting, by you not participating, what you are doing, you are directly creating issues for our democracy, because the voting results will not reflect the population, it will reflect a certain few. And by not taking part in something that is democratically allowed, something that was fought for you, something that was put in place for you, you are now saying to the powers that may be, do whatever it is you want, I don't care. And we have seen how that goes. We have seen time after time when certain people get into power, more specifically the People's Progressive Party, all of the great promises they do are just a whole cloak for their promoting their own self-interest. If you want a change, if you want a better life, if you want more money, if you want to be able to look at your country and to be proud, if you want a system where it doesn't wait until the year of election or a few months for election to fix roads and to come and to visit you, you have to take an active step in your democracy, which meaning that you have to participate, which means that you have to now come to the various parties and the stakeholders and you have to ask questions. You have to demand of them accountability. And the first step in holding a government accountable is in exercising your democratic right. You have to go out and you have to vote. It is not something that we take lightly, because in other parts of the world, persons are not even able to vote. You have the freedom protected by your constitution to align yourself with any political party, to hold any belief that you want to have, and you need to execute that right, because it is not for the today, it is not for the tomorrow, it is not even for the next year, but it is for the 50 years from now. Take, for instance, if men like Burnham and Chedi never went and fought for that independence, we will not be enjoying a lot of the freedoms which we have today. Now, to them, they were not looking at the immediate, being able to be an independent country, but they were thinking about the Guyana in which we live today. And because of that, they participated. And you and I are no different. And every single vote counts. It does not just count, but it matters. And if we want the country to go forward, if we want to see our country progressing, if we want to see people-centered leadership, people-centered development, it requires you to come out and vote. Now, some might say, I don't know a party to vote for, I ain't sure. But the reality is you have to come out and you have to ask questions. You need to be in the face of those presenting themselves, just like myself. You see me around, you stop me and you say, look, why should I vote for your party? What is it you're going to do? And it is from that there, it will stem into the growth and the development for the country that we all want to see.
Eden Corbin, attorney at law, candidate for the APNU in the general and regional elections 2025. Thank you, Eden, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back in a minute with another guest.
Thank you.
So your vote counts. Your vote is valuable. And above all things, your vote is not a commodity to be traded. Your vote is not on the market. It is not for sale. You know, it is often said that a country gets a government that it deserves. Let the government that you elect be the one that will take Guyana forward, be the one that will offer our country a people-centered development approach, a people-centered set of policies that will redound to the benefit of every citizen of this country. Our next guest who will be coming up, let me tell you who's in the lineup here. Ms. Vanessa Thomas is an attorney at law, and she practices law both in Guyana and Trinidad, I'm told. We'll get that from her when she steps into the chair. And she is very, very passionate about our country, about the development of our country and the role that women have played and continue to play in that regard. And after Vanessa, we'll be having Dr. Paul Williams, a retired Deputy Commissioner of Police. And it's very interesting that Dr. Paul Williams was at the time the most senior police officer in our country when his junior was elevated to the position of acting commissioner of police. And those who control the reins of power decided that they were going to, that they were in fact going to wait it out until Dr. Williams attained the age of retirement. And then they moved to confirm him, his junior. They moved to confirm his junior as Commissioner of Police. So we'll be hearing from Dr. Paul Williams after we hear from Vanessa. And you may know that Dr. Paul Williams is also an attorney at law. So Guyana is in good hands. The future of our country is in good hands. The destiny of our children in excellent hands with the people that we have lined up as candidates who will be assuming leadership roles as we continue the process of nation building. I'm joined by Ms. Vanessa Thomas, attorney at law. Vanessa is a second generation PNC person. Her father, one of my mentors, my guru, the man to whom I go when information of a certain nature is required, when motivation is required. Mr. Jeffrey Thomas, he is a gentleman who served our country for 24 consecutive years as a minister of government before his retirement. So we're going to be joined now in this conversation by Vanessa. She has been practicing law now for more than 20 years, and with practices, like I said earlier, in Trinidad and Tobago as well as in Guyana. We'll hear that directly from her now. Vanessa, welcome to Nation Watch. It's an honor to have you here. I owe a lot of what I am to conversations with your father over the years, and I'm honored to have you on Nation Watch. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. I accept your warm welcome.
Yeah. You have stepped into the political arena, and I was making the point before we started that without women in the People's National Congress reform, the largest political party in this APNU coalition, there would be no political party. And the involvement of women over the years has allowed our party to go and to thrive in and out of government, to survive all of the challenges that came before us. Tell us a little bit about your your journey to where you are now, and then we'll get into the contributions that you intend to make to building of this mighty nation of ours.
That's a loaded question, but I'll try my best to answer it. You started by saying that I am second generation politics, but the fact is that my mother's mother, a
Wow.
Diana Britton, who is a Diana prophet and who lived in Bedford, a village on the east coast, Demerara, was one of the founding members of the Women's Revolutionary Socialist Movement. A lot of people don't know that. So that my grandmother was also a female politician in those days. Of course, my mother followed in her footsteps and was also a member of the WRSM. So I might very well be third
Third
generation.
generation. Wow.
My father is, of course, no stranger to politics, and I don't know that I will ever fill his shoes. I don't know that I can dare try, but certainly I believe that the time has come to make my contribution.
This country will be definitely richer for your involvement. We have, in recent days, seen some horrible, really horrible developments as it relates to treatment of women. But there's a history to it. I believe it was 2 days ago that a woman was shot dead in Mocha while she was pursuing her daily bread, contributing to the growth and development of her own family, while her husband worked someplace else nearby. She was killed by persons who felt that, it was easier to get what she had than to go maybe work. We've also had a situation where an indigenous woman was allegedly drugged and raped, and there are videos circulating about the manner of treatment that she had to endure at a particular bar. It is very, very painful. But there was also, some years back, open disclosures by the first lady of this country at the time, Vashni Singh Jagdeo, about the treatment she received at the hands of her husband while they were supposedly married. I'm wondering if, and there's the other incident of a sitting minister, Nigel Darmlal, being accused of rape. I'm wondering if what's happening in our society in this open manner, having regard to the treatment of women, maybe moves emboldened by the fact that others in high office were accused and suffered no consequences. How do we deal with that in a society such as ours?
Well, I certainly hope that the depiction of violence is not the direction in which Guyanese are headed. I certainly hope not. I can tell you that violence against women must be met with zero tolerance as far as I am concerned. Apart from punitive sanctions, there must be corrective initiatives. I believe that a culture of empowerment should be pursued and ardently pursued so that our women will be educated and certainly not be victims of any form of violence whatsoever.
How do we fix this? Is it a need for enforcement of existing legislation? Is it awareness programs? Is it modified or amended legislation, or new legislation being required? How do we pursue this for the protection of our women and girls?
So laws certainly form a part of it, and laws are definitely helpful, but I believe that more can be done. Outside of the law, we can certainly look at institutionalizing certain cultural perspectives. Now, when I say that, what I mean is that there are certain avenues that we can pursue, such as setting up centers for girls and women, such as creating institutions specifically to deal with women's rights, gender equality, and generally women's issues. I believe that those institutions, both at a governmental and community level, will assist us in educating our women, but not just our women, also the men, uh, in relation to the rights of women and what is deserving in this day and age. I think that we are long past the discussion era. I think we are moving now towards action. And of course, I believe that that action is with a new regime.
Absolutely. But let's comment on what obtains in the current regime for a second before we move on. In the case of the Jagdeo situation I referred to earlier, where the First Lady at the time contended that she was locked out of the matrimonial bedroom, that she was forced to take baths at a neighbor's house instead of at the state house where she resided at the time and all that. When this happened, as in the case when Dharmlal was accused of, I think he was accused of rape. That matter came to an end with the intervention of the Director of Public Prosecution. But in both cases, you had in the Parliament, in the National Assembly of the Parliament of this country, women's rights activists associated with the People's Progressive Party who were silent on these allegations, who were silent on these revelations, who took absolutely no action. And among them were ministers responsible for social protection at the time. But these are the same persons who will come out and condemn others for lesser infractions. You note, for example, that the Minister of Human Services, I think it's called, Vinjya Prasad, was silent on the Dharamlal issue. But in the issue with the indigenous woman a few days ago, moved to shut down the bar, got the police involved, the perpetrators, I think, or persons of interest as the case may be, may have already been apprehended. So there seems to be a different approach depending on who is alleged to have been involved in certain behavior. How do we deal with that at the societal level?
Well, I can tell you that I am not certain that those women were in fact silent. I say this because I don't believe that any woman in the circumstances that they were put in would be silent. What I believe is that their voices may have been stifled, and so their
Politically gagged.
opinions, perhaps politically gagged, and so their opinions may not have mattered, or their opinions may not have been heard. But I don't know that those women would have been silent, particularly because they are women in leadership and they were empowered to lead. I know the stories of those women to some extent, and I do believe that they have sufficient experience, and I believe that they have sufficient knowledge, particularly given their academic pursuits, to do better and to say better. And that is why I believe that a unit particularly developed or established to treat with women's issues will get those voices heard. And I believe that that is the way forward for us. So that I know that in the manifesto of a partnership for national unity, there is provision for a distinct entity, governmental entity, to treat with women's issues in a real way.
You have come from a long line of persons involved in the shaping of our party, the shaping of our country. You mentioned your grandmother and your mother, and we know the strength of women in our party. Going forward, what do you anticipate the involvement of women like yourself and many others who help to strengthen this party of ours will be or should be in this changing environment of ours as we go forward, as we try to build up this nation in government after September 1, 2025?
Many years ago, I recall reading that women enter politics to fix a problem, and men enter politics for their own aggrandizement. I don't necessarily
I
subscribe
believe
to
the
that
first
view.
part. I believe the first
I don't
part.
necessarily subscribe to that view. But I know that women are nurturers, they're natural caregivers. And because women have that natural empathy, I believe that goes a far way in implementing, not designing, implementing policy.
Mhm.
Now, certainly in this new dispensation, I believe that women empowerment comes through education at community levels.
Mhm.
As a girl, I was a young developer.
Oh, yes.
And as a young developer, the
Te-
child arm of the
Oh, yeah,
party,
exactly. I was about to ask you to tell us what that is because
yes,
I joined at age of 8 or 9 years old, so I have a sense of what you're talking about, but
yes.
our viewers may not.
So it's a youth pioneer program which prepares young girls for adulthood and the world of work at a later stage. So the idea is to move from a young develop a young developer to probably the YSM and then
Mm,
move on to the WRSM and then of course the wider party.
mm,
If you're talking about the cycle of party politics.
mhm,
And I recall going to Cuba to the Jose Marti's Pioneers Camp.
mhm,
In that year, 1985, Forbes Burnham passed away. That's the year that I traveled to Cuba.
mhm,
It was my first experience out of Guyana. And I was acutely aware of the fact that I was a foreign national in new territory and that I had to behave myself in a certain way which represented who I was, not merely as my father's daughter, but as a young Guyanese girl who came from proud nationhood. And so at that age, I learned that certain behaviors would have to be adopted, that you conducted yourself in a way which signaled that you were not to be taken grantly, you were not to be taken lightly, you were not to be taken advantage of, and that there was a place for you. So you were allowed to express yourself. That expression of girls and young ladies is something that we must see more of because it leads to innovation and certainly young women who are allowed to engage in enterprise for which they're trained are able to make decisions at higher levels that can positively impact the lives of other women and the society as a whole. Now, outside of the fact that I was a young developer and also a girls' guide at Bishop's High School, I should let you know that I engaged in a lot of work with respect to collective bargaining agreements that allowed for the rights of not only working people, but working women. You mentioned legislation, and certainly legislation is part of it, but there must be a social contract between government and women, which allows women to achieve their potential. Women in Guyana work really hard and they are deserving of the rewards, the labor that they put into their daily lives must not go unnoticed. They must be able to harness the wealth, and harnessing the wealth means that Guyana's wealth must find its way in their hands to enable them to continue to do what is required. Women are natural leaders. In our home, our father was more of a titular head because when we were children, my brother and I, we were required to request permission from our mother before we could go to a party, before we could have friends over to the house. So we would go to her father and we would ask for permission, and he would say, if your mother says so, then it can happen.
That's typical.
Yes.
Typical of a Guyanese
Yes, a Guyanese,
household.
typical Guyanese household. And so I understood that it was mommy who made certain decisions. Now, I share the story because my mom recently passed away.
Unfortunately.
And she experienced a stroke, an ischemic stroke. I had no information about stroke, but I can tell you that she was supported by a medical team that included nurses whom were all women, hardworking women. And those women had 2 jobs and 3 jobs to be able to sustain their lives and the lives of their families. For me, a woman need not have more than 1 job.
The house is a job by itself.
That's
the
right.
Family and home, yeah.
That's right. But this economy has created for us now as women certain realities that strip us of the core of whom we were created to be. When I traveled along the East Coast Highway into Georgetown, particularly late at nights, the person standing alongside the road waiting for public transportation are women who are either going to work or leaving work. They're involved in healthcare, childcare, elderly care. I was coming to that, security. They work at restaurants and bars, so they're in the hotel and hospitality sector, and those women are not protected. So the protection of our women must be treated with utmost priority, as far as I believe.
It is the proposal of the APNU to put in place policies and other measures to ensure the protection of our women and our girls. But talk to us briefly on the soon to be appointed prime minister of this country, a woman, a young professional. What does it mean for us as a party? What does it mean for you as a woman? What does it mean for the population of the country at large, but particularly women?
I was particularly relieved. I was overjoyed, and I was proud that someone like Joretta Fernandez was given the nod as the prime ministerial candidate. She represents for us the transformation that we want to see in Guyana. She represents a measure of inclusion. She is a young Indigenous woman, and very often I believe that Indigenous women are not given the prominence for one reason or the other. And she represents to me that aspiration that is necessary. You know, if we aspire together, then we achieve together.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because she represents inclusion, diversity, youth, and education, I believe that her nomination, her assignment is huge. You see, she represents various facets of the developmental cycle
Mm-hmm.
of women. You know, women are considered minorities in some areas. And so she managed to do something which is not necessarily normal in Guyana. She broke the ceiling, first ever. And in doing so, she has led the path for others to believe that they can do it as well. And for me, that is important because you must dream, you must hope. And for too long, we have ceased hope. We no longer wish for and long for. And that domination, her vision signals that you can dream again. It's a breath of fresh air. It really makes a difference that she's on the ticket and that she is at the helm of the ticket. I hope that her shoulders are broad because to whom much is given, much is required. And we look to her for guidance and we look to her for representation because women deserve better, of course. And I believe that she will help us on that path to better.
Speak directly, Vanessa. Views Vanessa Thomas is an attorney at law with at least 22 years of experience. She's an educator. I would venture to say that she's a specialist in the area of behavioral sciences. And she is on the list of candidates for the APNU, another one of our brilliant candidates who will help to take this country forward. Talk to the voters in general, but more so specifically the women voters in this country. Why should they vote for the APNU come September 1, 2025?
The APNU is the only political organization that will give you an opportunity to participate in Guyana's wealth. You must no longer sit back and allow others to dictate for you what you must be part of. The APNU will put the oil money in your hands and not in the hands of a few persons for their own personal growth and their own personal development. For Guyana to grow, the PPPC must go. You are a woman. Women lead. Let's take the lead and let us get rid of the curse from this country. We have to do better as women. Our families depend on it. The lives of our young men depend on it. The lives of our husbands depend on it. The lives of our community depend on it. The lives of Guyana depend on the vote of the Guyanese woman. Go and vote for APNU. It is the only choice that makes sense, and it is the only right choice. Go and look at the food prices. Let us start there. We speak about healthcare. We speak about big hospitals and tall buildings. But what do we pay for food? How are we going to feed our families? That is what we do as women. That's what we're expected to do. And the only way to do that and to nourish our families is to vote for a partnership for national unity.
And restore the stability of our country, security of our citizens, the protection of our women and girls, the management, proper management, accountable management of the oil resources and other assets of our country. If I may add my 2 bits.
Absolutely.
Vanessa Thomas, thank you very, very much for joining us here on Nation Watch and for sharing your perspectives as a woman, as a professional, as a candidate, as a leader of this country going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will continue our conversation, but may I remind you that you need to get up to Melanie as soon as you finish with this program, walk with your picnic basket, walk with the entire family, walk with your noisemakers, and head up to Melanie and join the rally for a better Guyana. Join the rally for the people-centered development of our country. Join the rally for the election of the APNU to the government of Guyana. We will now be joined by Dr. Paul Williams. Dr. Williams is a gentleman who has served his country very well, who has dedicated more than 30 years of service to the Guyana Police Force. He retired at the rank of Deputy Commissioner of Police, and as I said earlier, was the most senior person in the Guyana Police Force at the time when his junior was appointed to perform the functions of Commissioner of Police. An unfortunate development from which Guyana still suffers. Dr. Paul Williams, welcome to Nation Watch. It's your first time here. It's not going to be anywhere close to the last. You are back home. You are now an attorney at law, and you are a candidate, a new candidate for the APNU in these elections. Welcome to Nation Watch. How does it feel to be all of those things packed into one?
Well, good morning, Mervyn, and to you, all our viewers, our followers, and those who we're looking forward to come strongly on board with the APNU. It's a pleasure being here. I want to say that I feel proud as a patriot. And I use that word patriot because for the journey I came and where I'm still standing. And I want our youths and other Guyanese to understand the sense of feelings and commitment of being a patriot. And once they understand what is patriotism, there is nothing gonna ever waver their mind or bring this type of contradiction or a type of feelings in terms of where to vote. The APNU has made the policy clear as it relates to what they intend to do as coming September 1st after the election and being elected into office. And I think once they've sat down, look at those policies and see what is there to offer in terms of empowering our youths and to take this generation forward, I think there's no question anymore about that.
You, how many years was it? 35 years in the police force? Was it?
38 years.
38 years.
38 years.
I am undervaluing
yes,
your
a lot of
service. I
things.
apologize.
I joined the police force as an apprentice.
Mm.
Then I was sent to national service. So I trained in national service. Also, prior to going to the police force, I was a postman.
Mm.
And also, I spent, after work study, I spent a year in the Guyana Defense Force working at Air Corps. That is where I did my work study program. And then I stayed on. And then from there, I moved into the post office and then to police. Why I didn't stay under the GDF? Because I was scared, I was afraid in terms of when those guys were passing through the airport, you know, joining the aircraft to go to Takam and those places. And when I heard some of the stories that they were talking in terms of the ghosts and the zombies that would happen to you, and that what got me scared. So I ran from there, go to the post office, but then I still had the calling that I wanted to be a part of the police force. And then I went to the police. And then when I joined the police, I had to go to national service. So I ran from the coffin and put up with the jungle, as it says. You know?
Well, I think that 38 years of national service in law enforcement is a remarkable contribution to the life of a country. Thank you so very much for your service on behalf of all Guyanese. I know that the Guyana Police Force is not what it used to be. How did we get to where we are with the police force being weaponized against political opponents, with the whole business of political reach into the police force to accomplish what the regime believes to be necessary? How did we get there? I remember the story of Paul Slow saying to a Minister of Home Affairs, I take my instructions from the Commissioner of Police and not from the political directorate. And he paid a price for that. I know of many professionals who would resist political instructions, but now it seems to be the norm. How did we get there?
I can give you a brief history. In 87, when I came out into the actual world of policing, okay?
Yeah.
In my training, there was a lot. And in terms of, it was always there for you to understand what is the purpose, what's the mission and the objective of the force.
Mm.
And always, your commitment and dedication stands within the law.
Yeah.
The Police Act 1601. And then follow from that, you have the standing orders, which we call the Police Bible.
Mm.
And then we had Insta-B duty, which was a pocketbook that you had on you, which summarized everything as it relates to the law, as it relates to the standing order, and it relates to what you're required to do as a policeman, on or off the beat.
Mm.
There was very high level of supervision. Despite those supervisors weren't university graduates, but there were people who committed to their job, who understand what they had to do.
Mm.
People you could have looked up to, people who could have guided you and take you to the right path. But one of the things there that discipline was paramount, discipline were very strict in terms of your appearance, in terms of your conduct, how you approach your work, and how you're able to deal with members of the public. And those are things that are the hallmarks of a good policeman. And they stay with us all the time, coming through. And that's what kept me in line. Okay? But then suddenly you've seen a change gradually come. And now at this level, I can honestly make that assessment. Okay? Because as of 92, when the government changed, okay, and the PPP comes into office, there were a lot of things way back then started to change. First thing, they removed national service.
Mhm.
And national service was there in order to assist and to help our young people, for those who may not have really truly made the marks in terms of secondary school student who would not have done well. Even persons who, despite they may have had qualifications, but they went rogue.
Mhm.
Okay, you were able to harness them. Because remember, as a juvenile, okay, there's no way that a conviction then would have hold against you when you become an adult.
Mhm.
Because the law stipulates that. So national service went away by the wayside, and that was something was very good. I've also seen in terms of in the community high schools, they were fully equipped in terms of skills
Mhm.
because they had a skill workshop for machinery, carpentry, joinery, masonry, home economics, all those things. Because despite I never went to community high school, but there was a community high school right in my village, Bedford, Acton, where I came from.
Mhm.
A lot of my relatives and grow much and so on, they came from community high school background.
Yeah, there
So I
was heavy.
regularly visited them and see how they operate. And even when school closed, those guys were sent out to work study. They were even working with professionals in the skills,
Mhm.
and they were able now to build the capacity. So now what you find, that definitely there is nothing more for them to do because all those community high school has gone to secondary.
Mhm.
And the community high school was to deal with the community.
And to
because it's
deal with the technical and vocational type
right.
education,
And
focus on agriculture.
those things gone.
Yeah.
So now you find that we have a lot of persons out there who doesn't really truly find themselves in good standing. Now, in the force of itself, over a period of time, as I'm seeing in terms of the decay, most of it really comes now in the latter part in my career. I know for sure, yes, there were other challenges, just like what we heard about Mr. Slow and Mr. Conway with their program, which is very wonderful.
Mhm.
They will give a lot of background in relation to what happened. And those guys made a lot of contribution in terms of showing how the system has decayed,
Yeah, well, Conway was training
right?
officer for 13 straight years, I believe, at
And I
one time.
work under him,
Yeah.
right?
And
I work under
you
him.
succeeded him as
Yes,
well.
I work under him. I succeeded him. And all those officers, I can say, we have learned a lot from. And those same officers were the ones who encourage us to go further afield and educate ourselves, go to universities and all these things and get yourself well equipped and ready, because they wanted to see a change in terms of the leadership. They wanted to see us better them in terms of when we're ready there to stand and to do the work, not only in terms of the experience, but we had the qualifications. We can able now to match, we can able to talk, we can able to relate to those international folks and so on. But then this whole thing as it relates to seeing the breakdown comes because why? There are persons who have undermined the system. For those who are indisciplined, for those who feel as though that they had a right because they become politically affiliated, and as a result of that, those are some of the things that they bank upon and use it in terms of the way to get where they are today. You understand me? And as a result of that, it also spilled down and it went down to the junior ranks, which they have promoted a lot of indiscipline, a lot of disrespect. Because
how do we fix this decline as a new government waiting to be formed after September 1? How do we arrest the decline of the Guyana police force at the management level? I maintain that there are many good men and women in the Guyana police force who diligently pursue their work, who conscientiously do what their oath of office told them to do. But there are few, and the management of the Guyana police force is what seems to be the location of the problem. How do we fix this going forward?
well, to fix it going forward, the first thing you got to look at in terms of one, persons who hold key position, whether they're capable and competent too. Okay. Then the next thing too, you got to look on the basis of accountability, because that's lacking. Because once people are held accountable, it simply means that they will do the work the right way, because they will have to answer
Or leave?
or leave, right? So accountability capacity building, okay? We'll have to ensure now that the order that ought to be there in terms of seniority and those things finds itself in the right perspective. Because over the period, we have seen a lot of jumping, a lot of persons are being superseding and all these things, including me. I was superseded, you understand me? So that become the norm of the day. So that of itself undermine the whole operation and the system of the force, because there are persons who can do much better than some of the persons who are even leading them. But then what happened? They're being superseded. And as a result of that, you will find them being underperforming. I have seen a lot of ranks who we have spent a lot of money on training, both locally and overseas. Let me bring you to this. They had the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative,
Yep.
which was done by the US. Okay. We have the Justice Education Society by Canada. Okay. Then we also have the TEG, with the Emergence Group out of Washington. And then those other programs that were even done during the same PPP administration. You had the Citizen Strengthening Security Program, and you have the Citizen Security Program. And those programs give birth to some intense survey and investigation and all those things that we look at in modernizing the force. Okay, you have the Capita Simmons report, right? Which is very, very important. Very important, very intense. Those things now, even we had Russell Combe and those type of engagement roll out a lot of programs. We have manuals and modules there covering over like about 40 something programs are there about. And those things are being thrown away aside. I've seen now that they're talking about new programs and new this and new that. We have established a great relationship with the University of Guyana, because I was actually the point man who was dealing with the University of Guyana, where we had programs designed by Dr. Corton, Professor Bishop, Calvin Eversley, you name them, all those guys. And there were programs that really designed for the Guyana Police Force, taking into consideration the context, the locality, the culture, and everything. Those things, I don't know what is happening now.
So you don't need to reinvent the wheel if you want to improve the functioning and management of the Guyana Police Force. It's already there.
Well, that is one of the things that I know. If it can work, why break it? Okay? And there's a lot of programs there that I feel to myself has not been utilized, has not been disseminated, and those that we would have really truly worked on and established and set a good foundation pillar, it has all been dismantled. I've seen ranks, let me give you an example. There are ranks who've trained well in crime scene management, investigative techniques, and all those things. And those ranks are walking the streets doing beat duty.
Yeah, you remember Michelle,
right?
I often refer to her. I think she was a sergeant at the time, and she was trained in the area of domestic violence, and she was trained in the area of human trafficking. And the Guyana Police Force promoted her to inspector and put her in the traffic department. I mean, how can you have a successful management structure, successful execution of your policies when you misplace your assets? There seems to be a very, very serious problem with management there.
Well, based upon the feedback and information, the present administration, and I wouldn't blame everybody, they know themselves. A lot of them are dealing with personality rather than purpose, because there are lots of ranks there who they know capable of doing the job. Justice Education Society has built a storeroom in terms of where they have proper storage, management, and movement of exhibits. And there was a rank who trained to do that, okay? Who trained to do that, and also has the capability to train other ranks to do that. I learned that that rank now is at the abattoir, sitting down, looking and examining in terms of the slaughtering of animals and so on. I've seen another rank who we have sent to train in the US, right, as a dog handler, because we have purchased 3 dogs under my time, sitting as Deputy Commissioner Administration. We purchased 3 dogs. And those persons who we had to send, we had to ensure that those persons went and have a discussion with the family, because the trainers told us that these persons who we send, they must be ready to tie and to cling that bond to these dogs like their children, like their family, because they will have to visit them regularly and so on. We went, those ranks discussed with the family and everything, and it was understood. They came back with a commitment and we sent them. I came back home from law school and I saw one of the young men working taxi. So therefore, if he's working taxi, the dog left at the peril now
Is he
to
still a member of the
underperform.
force?
He's not a member of the force anymore. The dog is left there to underperform. So when it comes to certain situation and crime scene and those things, I'm of the view they're only just saying that they're going to send dogs and these things, but they don't have the handlers to take the dogs.
Let's talk about safety. We've had situations within recent times. We've had a man executed in his bed by a rank from the SWAT unit who was recently been sentenced to some time in prison. We've had Quindon Bacchus, who was shot and killed when it was alleged that he was taking shots at the police, and an analysis of the weapon proved that it could not have been fired. It was defective. We've had situations with the Henry boys who were murdered, and then Harish Singh was murdered after in the same general geographic area. We heard about the involvement of the regional security system in those, or service or whatever it is, in those investigations. Then we had the murder of this young man in Linden, who police say in their statement that ranks were deployed fully attired in police issue uniforms and in marked vehicle and all sorts of things. And when you saw the video, you saw a dark colored vehicle with tint and policeman in a black pair of trousers and a white t-shirt. You know, all these misinformation and misleading stuff going out there. And then in the demonstrations, a young man leaving his work in Georgetown to go home was shot and killed. Another one shot in the eye. All these things are happening out there. And there seem not to be accountability for the operations of the Guyana Police Force in these matters. And then on the other hand, you have violent crimes. Most recently, a couple of days ago, a woman shot and killed in Mocha while plying her trade. And before that, a young man shot and killed in Agricola, allegedly gang-related. All of these things are happening. And it's impacting on the psyche of the citizens of this country. Yet we have a commissioner of police who says crime has reduced by a whole bunch of statistics he's producing, that crime has reduced. When we understand that not all criminal activity is reported. I understand that there are about 4 categories of crime that are reported and the others go unreported. How do we create a safer environment for our citizens, whether it be in our homes, places of business, or on the streets or whatever? How do we create that, and how quickly can we create that as after assuming office following elections on September 1?
Now, as it relates to policing goes hand in gloves with the will, the commitment, and the support of the society you serve. There's no way they can be disengaged. And if there's a disengagement between the police and the community, their job will always be difficult. And the thing is that people want to see police being honest. People want to see police being proactive. I've served the Guyana Police Force throughout the length and breadth of this country, and in the capacity of commander and even in the capacity of crime chief. And you will sit on your phone, people will get your number, people will call you, people will give you information. And people will look to see how you act on those information. And then they will develop that trust. So I'm telling you that I know there are lots of information out there being shared, but it's what they do with the information, how they act in relation to the information. two incidents that I want to speak about. I remember during 2019, because when the Apnu coalition came into government, from 2015, we started to reduce crime during my watch, because crime would have moved down by 10%, okay, between 2016 and 2017. Then thereafter, we went to 23% decrease, okay, in 2016, 2017. 2018, we would have had a slight decrease, only by 12%. But what happened then? We were having a lot of street robberies. And the street robberies now, what you find that these motorcyclists, they were just riding up, rob people, spontaneous, and very spot across, okay? And myself and the present commissioner who's sitting there, because he was commanding a division, and it was in the division it was happening. And I call him, and we develop a strategy. We developed a strategy. And our strategy was here, listen to me. After 10 o'clock in the morning, everybody should be at work, who are to be at work, and already drop the children to school. So for those persons who we see linemen and gathering up and so on and things, let us approach them, challenge them, and find out what they're doing and check out the documents of their bike to see the legitimacy of them and so on. And that of itself helped to bring a reduction of those guys on the street. So they had the opportunity to move freely and at their own peril and these things and so on. And we were able to reduce crime. Okay. We were able to bring a totally halt to piracy.
Oh, yes.
We're
Oh,
almost
yes.
about, in 2018, where we had almost about 15 persons who would have lost their life. 20 of them on 4 boats and almost 15 persons. Some bodies were found, some up to now, okay? And we were able to bring a dent to that. From since then to now, there have never been
Zero piracy.
Zero piracy. So it's about how you committed and your passion to do your work with the information being given.
So you see us being able in the reassumption of government to effectively make our country safer again for its citizens.
It is possible. It is possible. From traffic to crime. Also, what we have to do, we have to now increase the offenses within our Uniform Crime Index, which they call serious crime. Because if you only said that you're looking at rape, murder, robberies, okay, those are the things that what you're going to be focusing on and what happened to the others, okay? And little crimes turn out to be big crimes, because look like yesterday incident, even if those men went with the intention just to rob and go, but it turned out to robbery, murder, okay? And once you have ranks who realize and know that definitely in the giving their best, they're going to be rewarded in terms of promotion, recognition, and those things, they're going to work.
Yeah, well, one of the alarming things for me, actually, as we wrap up, is the fact that narcotics-related offenses are not listed in those statistics. And you've had a surge in those within recent times. I believe you had some discipline services members intercepted and apprehended for possession. In fact, you had a senior superintendent who was sanctioned by the United States authorities for involvement in drug trafficking, to the extent of 4.5 tons of cocaine being passed through the region under his command at the time. And according to the reports from the US in their sanctions, he was perceived as being complicit. So those are not reported, but are those not really serious crimes? And are we prepared to tackle them going forward after September 1, as you did while the coalition was in government? I remember the police and army, I believe, seized 2 or 3 aircrafts engaged in unlawful activities in our country during that period. Intense patrolling, heavy intelligence gathering, and so on. Are we likely to see a return to that as we seek to make our country a safer place for its citizens?
Yes, we will, because there are a lot of ranks there who are still prepared and willing to work and to give their best. But the thing is that they're not in the position where they're capable of using and applying their expertise. Also, facts are stubborn things. Mr. Slow always said that it is true. The facts are there. And if the authority or who ought to ensure that ranks are being disciplined or stern actions or accountability ought to be made, and that is not happening, it is the same, it's going to trickle down all the way to the lower ranks, because when they look at the head and see what you're doing and you're not being sanctioned, you're not being disciplined, you're not being sent home, or you're not being, they're going to tell themselves, well, we can do the same thing and we don't have to come to or answer to nobody.
Fish rots
Okay.
from the head.
So even with the performance of our ranks on the road, you see the big confrontation in terms of fighting with the public and all these things. We never had that in our time because ranks were being taught. They know what type of offense they have to get confrontational with. They know what offense they have to arrest for. They know what offense they can summons and all these things. But then it seems as though there is nothing being told properly. They don't even know the distinction. You understand me?
It's
So that's
evident
it.
that they do not know the
Even-
approach to arrest either. So, but
Even I heard that it was even mentioned that the police force will be equipped should the government go back into power with more IT and all these things and so on. But then I know for sure from the beginning of my career, okay, forensic capability was there, fingerprinting, photography, okay, and all those things. Those were essential and elementary aspect leading up to the more sophisticated aspect of forensic and so on. But then none of that is being used. I haven't seen anything like that applied at this Adriana Young crime scene. Okay?
a big issue. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Paul Williams, attorney at law, retired Deputy Commissioner of Police, sharing with us his perspective with respect to how we are going to make our society a safer place for all citizens, and I dare add, particularly women and girls. This brings us to the end of our program of Nation Watch today. We have presented to you 3 candidates who have made their case for you to vote for the APNU, and I urge you to recognize the symbol of a party, the palm. It is the palm that is going to free us from political victimization at the level of the police. It is the palm that is going to ensure that our human rights, basic human rights, constitutional rights are respected, that our indigenous communities will no longer suffer from political victimization and political manipulation. It is the palm that would ensure that the ethnic and political discrimination in the award of contracts and educational and other opportunities will come to an end. It is the palm that will ensure that the oil resources reach your pocket, reach your tables, reach your pots. It is the palm that will guarantee you a safer society. It is the palm that will guarantee you economic upliftment. It is the palm that will guarantee a reduction in the cost of living and in the empowerment of our young people going forward. It is the palm that will liberate this country and take us to a rendezvous with prosperity. Because for Guyana to grow, the PPP must go. Until we meet again, God bless. Hope to see you at the rally this afternoon at